And some of you were here yesterday, and we had the laptop fiasco and the presentation hanging. Hopefully, the technology should work today. As Mr. Kapoor has said, there is going to be informal session. We want to have discussion. We are very privileged to have him here. In fact, last year also we were together in a session, and the journey continues. What we would be doing is we hope it to be a informal and facilitated discussion session than really preaching as such. What we would be doing is we'll be using certain slides more to illustrate a point, but they're not prescriptive per se. When we also talk about lean today and share our experiences and our thinking, again, please sort of keep that in mind, that again, none of these are words cast in stone, that they have to be exactly like this. They can be different interpretation, different people have their different experiences, and even successful international brands, when they go from one culture to other, they adapt it. Because ultimately, these philosophies and these practices have to be embraced by people. These are real people, and they must feel comfortable about it. So it's a question of how do you make people feel comfortable and adopt some of these profound messages in a manner they can implement with ease, and they're not uncomfortable about it. So that's what we try to keep. Also, what we can also quickly try to gauge from the audience today is if you have any questions in mind. If you want to share at this point of time, we'll make a note, and we'll try to see as the deliberations go, we will try to address them, try to sort of touch upon them. I would also like to say, apart from myself and Paul today, we also have team from Madura Clothing, Lal Sudhakaran and his team, and he has kindly agreed to present a case study on Madura's lean journey, which will be again a full case study from a company's perspective as such. And I think that would be really additional perspective in terms of the lean implementation. So anybody has any pressing questions in their mind at this point of time, we would like to sort of set the agenda, feel free. Because we definitely want to listen to you. And that's why the lights are full on that side also. Anybody has any questions and expectations that we must try to get answer to this particular question as such?
Where's Charles?
Pardon me?
Where's Charles?
Yeah, that's true. That's mystery. It was supposed to be a session to be conducted by Charles, and unfortunately he's not able to come because he had some visa problems. So OGTC sort of requested us to come in, and we are very privileged to be with you. The whole idea is to generate a discussion session, also give an opportunity for people to share their experiences, because in last 2 years, there's a lot of work being done in OGTC on lean implementation. There are a lot of good experiences which can be shared, and it can be a mutual learning. It will also be learning experience for us. So any questions at this point of time? Otherwise, we'll move on, and feel free to interject, stop us at any point of time. Absolutely. Welcome. So, what is lean? It's about elimination of waste. How do very quickly, in virtually no time, are we able to respond to our customers' needs in minimum steps, so that customer doesn't have time to think that maybe he should go to someone else. In nutshell, that's what is the thinking which is driving. The core philosophy is waste elimination, which shortens the timeline between the customer order and shipment by eliminating waste. And this has been going on for quite some time. Many industries implemented. Automotive were the first ones to take a lead, and of course now it has become a global phenomena. But the basic fundamental philosophy is identify waste and get rid of waste as much as possible. Taiichi Ohno, he talked about, all we are doing is looking at the timeline from the moment the customer gives us an order to point where we collect cash. So, generation of order to collection of cash. And we do that in minimum time by eliminating waste. So waste elimination is very, very critical, very, very important. The companies that are embracing lean, what are they trying to do? Is develop an ability to recognize and identify waste. Number two, have courage to call it waste, because many of these things traditionally were not considered waste. Okay, inventory was not considered waste. Now you have a new definition. You actually say, okay, this is a waste. I must get rid of it because that's my blocked capital. Okay, have a desire to eliminate it. So once you see it, once you call it waste, then of course you actually work on and eliminate that waste as such, because you realize that waste increases cost, produces no corresponding benefits as such, and threatens our job because it really threatens the competitiveness of the organization as such. Of course, there's a lot of tools being talked about for lean and House of Toyota. Many of these you are very, very familiar with. I'm not going to get into details as such, but since we're talking about the subject, I just wanted the slide to be there. Okay, let's move forward. If you look at some other literature, the slide from the Supply Chain Leadership Committee of AAFA, American Apparel and Footwear Association, and they're talking about these tools, which will be important tool for any company if you're going to get into the lean journey as such. What is the commonality between lean and the garment industry? Lean equals SEW. And what is the SEW? Systematic elimination of waste. And in that background, what are you trying to see is how do you identify waste? Now, there are a lot of people here who are already very familiar with what these wastes are, definition of waste, and what the 7 types of waste are. So what we would do, the people who are very familiar with 7 wastes, can you please raise your hands? Please, don't shy away from raising your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Some more? Okay. I hope the other ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm just quickly going to touch upon waste. We'll not spend a lot of time, but always we can revisit. If you have questions, we'll be able to address those. Because I can't now assume that everybody knows about waste, so we should not touch about. Because lean is about systematic elimination of waste. And we'll spend some time. But before that, when you do systematic elimination of waste, that means you're increasing your value-added activities and decreasing non-value-added activities. And we must understand what is a value-added activity. Value-added activity is any activity that physically transforms goods or information, physically transforms it to a new level where there's incremental value. So it could also be raw information coming to a merchant, which he or she puts into a plan. Okay, it's a value-added activity because now that new information is more useful, has a more value because it can affect the bottom line. Or it can be goods. So you have fabric coming in, it is cut, it's become cut pieces, physical transformation. That's the first rule. Second rule of value-added activities, it has to be done right first time. If there's a rework, then it's a already non-value-added activity has come in. And third important thing is customers should be willing to pay money for that. The customers see value. Value not from the manufacturer's point of view, value from the customer's point of view. So if these 3 rules apply to any activity, then it's a value-added activity. If any of this one doesn't apply, then it becomes a non-value-added activity. And non-value-added activities is actually our money going down the drain. Because we pay money, but customer may not be willing to pay. Or he may pay you very little because he doesn't recognize as an activity which he needs to pay for. So are the 3 rules okay? It must transform, right first time, customer should be willing to pay money for that. If it is not, it's a non-value-added activity. There are some non-value-added activities which are essential. You can minimize them, but you can't just eliminate them as such. A quick introduction to 7 waste, and when I talk about waste, I'll get you some real examples, so visualization becomes a little better. Transportation. When you move goods from one place to other, it doesn't really add value to it. It only adds cost. Okay? And from buyer's point of view, customer's point of view, there isn't distinct value addition as such. So we need to minimize transportation as much as possible. You cannot eliminate 100%, but minimization is very, very important. Typically in the factories, you may have crisscross flow, you may have goods moving up and down, can be streamlined within the limitations. Sometimes you may need to make changes to a physical structure. You might not be able to do. The idea is how much you can minimize, you must be able to minimize because it will smoothen the flow, goods will move in unidirection, and the bottlenecks will be lesser. Inventory. And this, there has been a lot of misnomer. People have been counting unfinished goods as assets. And in many thinking, many philosophies, these are liabilities because your money is stuck. Till the time you get money from the customer, it is definitely a waste. Blocks money, occupies space, leads to damages. We worked recently with a factory in Ludhiana, group of companies, and this was for domestic market. Finishing had huge amount of WIP, and they were struggling in terms of how to do things. And they were taught to this 7 waste principle was explained to them. Once they understood inventory is muda, because the Japanese word for inventory is for waste is muda, they put their act together dramatic results. Not only the inventory went down, not only the sort of your lead time went down in finishing, overall speed of the factory increased. I asked the owner, what is the single most important thing that has happened in your organization, because your productivity is also increased dramatically. He says, sir, inventory गायब हो गई, सब कुछ दिखने लग गया. Inventory खत्म हो गई, सब कुछ दिखने लग गया, अब तो बस चलता है. Finishing के अंदर माल रुकता नहीं है. So what I'm saying is, when there is so much amount of inventory you can't see because it's blocking your vision, now it's moving. So anything stops, you have immediate action. You have no comfort zone where you can relax for 3 hours, 4 hours, or even for that matter 30 minutes. Motion. Wasted human motions. Sometimes you just get used to doing certain things in complicated manner. But once you start seeing it, once the workers start seeing it, once the supervisor starts seeing it, then the suggestions for improvement start coming in. It's a question of unlocking people's mind to see wasteful motions, and how do you really improve those, how do you really reduce those, so that people are not tired and they can produce much more with least amount of human efforts as such. N number of examples are happening in your factories also. Waiting is another major area. We find it's a 10-line factory, typically about 2 lines, people are waiting. Either for approval, either for, embroidery hasn't come, something or other, quality issue has not been sorted out. And there are n number of pictures where you have people, and once you start waiting, then the momentum starts going down. And once the momentum starts going down, kick-starting it is very, very difficult. Overproduction, just in case. Okay, overproduction is producing more than the next process requirement. So you produce more, again, inventory starts getting piled up, you don't know what's happening, visibility goes down, have a problem. And again, you have more money stuck in the pipeline. Overprocessing, doing it more than required. Longer laundry cycle time, repressing, re-inspection, it's overprocessing. Using more chemical, just in case, because your process is not under control. As a result, you'll have to put in more resources as such. Last, out of the 7, any thinking, what is this one? Out of the 7 waste, which one is this one? Absolutely right. Defect. What you have a press to cut component to the exact size. And after the press, you have a guy, a craftsman, with chisel and hammer. He's just trying to fix things. But that's what tends to happen in many processes. Things are improving. The idea is not to criticize anybody. The idea is to see where are the opportunities for us to improve. So it has to be seen from that point of view. How do people on the shop floor start seeing opportunities for improvement and start contributing to that process? It's not about pointing fingers that you're not doing your job right, but really empowering people that they can start seeing things in a new light, new way. And if you're wanting to be a lean company, you are a lean company, I'm sure that this message goes down to every worker. And subsequently, we're going to have a live case study from Madura, and we'll hear more about how they have done this. But it's very, very important. And we found n number of case studies within OGTC family, where by reducing defects, things have really gone up tremendously, especially in the finishing area. Productivity improvement of almost 100% has happened in OGTC factories only by reduction of defects as such. We always say, by inspecting, you cannot produce quality. Quality has to be produced right first time. Otherwise, defects and inspection actually is a muda. All right? And you need to reach to a level that no inspection is required. And that's what people are aiming at, that's what people are dreaming at, and many companies are actually achieving it. Okay? In a quick glance, I want to share with you a recent case study of a group of 7 factories in Ludhiana. We worked on a variety of waste with them. Worked on a simple methodology. How the principles of lean or waste reduction can be explained to people on shop floor in a manner which they can easily understand, de-glorifying them in a language which people can understand, explain, and the gains on productivity as well as quality side, as well as some of the other important indicators of lean are quite impressive. You're typically looking at productivity improvement starting from about 33%, about 25% to 60%. And the 60% is a factory which worked on their finishing room WIP elimination and has really gone to a fantastic level of performance. Defect rate reduction, reasonably good. There is scope for reduction because it's a huge amount of rework, but people are working. They realize that they can do it and it's possible. reduction in cut-to-ship rejection rate. Some factories had very, very high rejection rate. They did not know because they did not have measurement system. Housekeeping has improved. Great scope for improvement. In a journey of quality, there is no finishing line. But we don't get perturbed. We say, okay, you make a start. That's good. Continue. Step by step by step. Don't straight away look at moon, otherwise you'll fall on your knees, you'll break your knees. That's not the idea. That's not what we want. We want you to make a steady progress, step by step. WIP reduction, wonderful. Some other cases of single piece flow or quick response lines. Now, when we look at this, we quickly need to look at some of the history of lean. That was it always called lean? Is it something new? Did it come into existence about 5 years ago or 7 years ago or 8 years ago? Let's quickly understand. And I'm just quickly, with your permission, going to take you back to the evolution of garment industry and how the production systems really evolved. Is that okay? Should we get into history a little bit? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So it all started with custom tailoring. All right. People started stitching garments at home. Moms stitched garments for their kids, for their husbands, and so on. Agrarian economy. Okay. Then around the First World War, Second World War, the garment factories came up, where you had cutting rooms where cutting was done, and the cutting was given to the people who stitched at home, and then subsequently the factories came up. Now, when you did that transition, you got benefit of division of labor, and you started doing better specialized processes. The labor content started coming down. You went into the assembly line, typical assembly lines, maybe 30 machines, 40 machines, and things like that. You got further benefits of productivity improvement. You started getting more consistent quality products. Okay. By this time, the industry in West started getting the competition from Japan and Korea and Hong Kong. And they realized that we need to do something about it because these people are learning very fast. They also can have assembly lines and their wage costs are very, very low. That we must really up the automation. And yes, the automation was improved. You had specialized machines, pocket setters, belt attaching, placket making, sequential buttonholers. All possible things were done. And where we reached? A progressive bundle system, kind of a manufacturing system with specialized machines. And with all these engineers' work, the work content of a shirt was brought down to about 12 minutes. Sometimes we have examples of 11.10 also. Of course, we break down some more operations, it can go down. Jeans were brought down to about 9 minutes. All possible engineering was done. Okay. Then what happened? After doing this became specialized units. They required millions of pieces of orders. But in West, you could not do millions of pieces of orders because it was too expensive to produce. And that's where the Western factories realized that this automation is not going to help us. We now need much more flexible way of manufacturing. And that's where concepts of modular manufacturing, cellular manufacturing, team-based manufacturing, and subsequently the new avatar, lean, came into existence. So this has been there in garment industry almost for past 25 years. Is that okay, Paul, if I say so? Yeah. About 25 years? Yeah. So, and then of course the next jump or simultaneous work is happening on mass customization, where how you can quickly understand the needs of customer and deliver a product in virtual no time. And yesterday Oram shared some of those concepts with us. That's quite interesting to see how technology is helping now really converting the customer's needs into a product in no time, and sometimes get paid money in advance. The moment customer sees the product, say, I want this, take my money and give me the product in 3 days' time, which is the next level as such. But that's how the whole evolution is. So you almost started from custom tailoring and you're virtually going to mass customization. Now, all these production systems exist in this world, different parts of the world, in the same country at a given point of time. So in India, we have custom tailoring, we have assembly lines, we have jugaad system, which in a way is an impure form of lean, or impure form of team working, that delivers in many cases as such. So that's what the whole background is. Okay. So these automated machines, I visited a factory in UK, Marks and Spencer factory in 1992. It had automated label attach operation, 6 seconds is the cycle time. It has got pneumatic air jets. It has a pickup device. Every 6 seconds a piece goes on. About 4,800 pieces per day production. And the operator is part of machine. You can't figure out which one is machine, which one is the operator, because it is running at that kind of a rapid pace. Did not work. Specialized machines for attaching yoke to the back. The machine moves. The pieces are stationary. Machine moves. Very, very labor intensive. Okay, twin machines. But all this did not really lead researchers thought that they could automate garment manufacturing process. The fabric could go from one side, garments will come out from the other side. TC Square in USA did that. MITI project in Japan tried to do that. Finally, they gave up. That this industry, this material, and this business is not, from that point of view, fiber to fashion automation friendly. Unless some new technology comes in where you spray kind of cellulosic fibers on a dress form and just wrap it out and person wears it, some time to that. Knitting industry though, fully fashion knitwear, you can convert yarn to final product. So yes, in certain areas, technology is really transforming the manufacturing process. While that was happening, market started really demanding quick response. Because market has no time, buyers want to really wait till the last moment because I'm not very sure what's going to sell. And that's where the need for quick response really came in, which people called it flexible manufacturing, self-managed work teams. In 1994, we had a seminar on self-managed work teams. How does this work, especially in the UK factories and so on. TSS, Toyota Sewing System. Till that time, the word lean hadn't really picked up because it was still cooking at Toyota and it was being called in different terms, Toyota Production System or other areas as such. But what exactly it means, all these terms, they are heavily team-based manufacturing. The key principles there are self-organized, self-motivated, multi-skilled, versatile operators who come together, take their joint decisions, sharing responsibility, responsible for both production and quality together. So it's a much more people-centric approach where people sort of take the responsibility and it is passed on to them. People are empowered to do their job on their own. Okay, this I'm going to sort of quickly run through and not get into details as such, but if there are any questions, we can always take later on. It talks about how it is different. Of course, in the West, the economies were different. Okay, machines were much cheaper. Machines were much cheaper. People were very expensive. So you had one person operating 3 machines. All right, because we really wanted to get the best out of your people, and the main key concern was how do we respond quickly. When you apply that into Asian context, probably the rules will change and you may say, okay, one person, one machine. Sometimes now also, in India too, people are expensive. So many people who are implementing are now looking at one person, 2 machines. There's no hard and fast rule. There's no hard and fast rule that people have to only stand and stitch. You can stand and stitch, you can sort of sit down and stitch. As long as it works for you, it delivers for your KPI, it's fine. As long as the overall principles are fine, you're in the right direction as such. So at this stage, I'm going to invite Paul to sort of pitch in and talk about, share his experience in terms of how it happened in UK and what are the important key factors there. Can I invite you, Paul? Yes. Can you please all welcome Paul?
Oh, good morning, everybody. I was actually sitting there looking at the audience and thinking, I did exactly the same a year ago at this conference, and every face was completely new to me. I just stood looking around now, and there's so many familiar faces. Oh, that's changed over a year. Amazing. And Rajesh said he's just invited me. I was actually in the departures lounge at London Heathrow Airport, and I got a phone call. Hey, Paul, we're now doing 2 sessions, not 1. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the invite, Rajesh. But, yeah, so as I'm doing a session this afternoon, as you're all aware, so I'm going to be very, very careful not to duplicate what I say. But just to give you some idea of some of the modular manufacturing that went on in the UK, I really got involved when a lot of companies failed. And without going into too much of what I'm going to do this afternoon, a lot of the companies realized that a lot of their failure was lack of training. And I got involved very heavily, because I was perceived as the training man by many of these companies. I got involved initially in putting in training systems. They hadn't trained managers, they hadn't trained supervisors, and they most definitely had not effectively trained the operators. And the operators I'll go to first of all in several ways. One, when they're dealing with 3 or 4 machines, maybe even 5 operations, they need a great deal of multi-skilling. But even more importantly than the actual sewing skills, they needed to be taught to think differently. Under the old system, the piecework systems that were in place, the operator came in the morning, sat at the machine, kept this shut, and just sat and sewed and sewed and sewed on the same operation. When they went into modular, yes, they had to do 3, 4, 5 operations, but they were given responsibility. They were empowered. Make your own decisions. Don't do what the supervisor tells you, because the supervisor isn't going to be there to tell you to do anything. They're there for advice. And a lot of people just didn't understand this change. Also, on the old piecework system, you were greedy. I was concerned with me and how many I did, because that was my money. Couldn't care less about that person, couldn't care less about that person. I'm only interested in me. When they started to work in teams, and their salary was based on the output of the team, all of a sudden I'm starting to worry about this person and worry about this person. But my attitude had to change. I could work faster than this person. Okay, I had to accept that for the common good. This day, this person was having an off day. They're not feeling very well. Child was ill before they come to work. They haven't got the brain in gear. Okay, I accept that. I cover for them. And it took a completely change of attitude. And this is where a lot of the companies failed to really implement and get their people going. And this is where I started to get involved very heavily, implementing this sort of training, combined with skills training. And it took a lot of work and a lot of real hard work with people, even with supervisors. You've got the old-fashioned supervisor who's a real autocrat. Right? Sit down, shut up, get on with it. Do what I say. All of a sudden, these people were being told, you don't tell anybody what to do. You're there to facilitate. You're not there to control. If they want something, you make sure it happens. And this took a complete change. And a lot of people couldn't cope. A lot of people could not cope with it. And unfortunately, they had to fall by the wayside. I'll expand on that a little bit. And so it took a whole complete change of culture. And it took a great deal of effort, as I said. And a lot of people couldn't cope. And a lot of companies actually reverted back to the old ways. And what it needed was management support. The whole thing needed different. But to change from progressive bundle, individual piecework, to this sort of team working took far more than just let's train the operator. And a lot of companies failed. As I said, I got involved very heavily. One company in particular was a real challenge. It's the only factory I've ever been into where they were making T-shirts and fully fashioned knitted garments in the same unit. I've never seen it anywhere else. And this was because the company produced both of these products for Marks and Spencer's, and Marks and Spencer's had halved their fully knitted, fully fashioned knitwear product orders, and had increased the T-shirts. And they'd got operators of 20, 30 years experience on fully fashioned knitwear, and they were being asked to produce T-shirts in modular. So not only was it a complete change of product, a complete change of thought, a complete change of everything. And to get these people to work, it was extremely difficult. And I got involved when they said, right, we're retraining these people, come in and write the training programs. I spent a lot of time at training programs, and if we get time later on, I have actually got videos from that factory. So you can actually see some of these people working modular. You can see how some of the poor devils struggled. All right, so, and also found that we also got to get to the managers, because it's a completely different way of planning lines, planning the teams. You could plan a traditional line, and I have to say, and it's not because I'm British and it was the UK, but the people got extremely good at it. When I was running factories in the UK, I was working on traditional lines. All my factories had traditional lines. I was expected to work to an 85% efficiency. And if I did not achieve 85% efficiency, working for ruthless people, and you were down the job centre. And I'm sure those of you from the experience of the UK industry will know just what it was like. But we got good at it. But circumstances, as Rajesh have said, we had to change. We had to go down this modular route. And we then had to learn to completely plan the lines in a completely different way. And a lot of the reason that people failed as well was because of lack of planning of lines, but also lack of planning in how you implement modular. And this you'll find with your lean. And the first question has gone up on there. The first question, well, you can put the slide back up, please. I've had enough of seeing enough of myself. I'm getting older. And I've been very good since I've been here. I was warned by my wife before I come.
Slide.
Thank you. I've been very good since I've been here. I was warned by my wife. She says, don't you mention it. So I'm not going to mention cricket in the England team. No, and I'm very careful because in 2 years' time the foot will be on, the shoe will be on the other foot, and then I'll get it back. So no, I'm not going to. Right. So, but the first question that's always asked when you make these sort of changes, first question that is up there is salary. That's the first question your operators will ask. How does it affect me? And the second question they'll ask is salary. What's it for me? And that's the first thing you've got to have really set out. That's the first thing, because, as we found, first thing of this is, oh, it's some sort of super ploy to reduce our salary. Right? They've got to save money. They're going to cut our salaries. Or it's, right, we'll keep the same salary, but they're going to make us do more for the same money. Right? And you've all heard it, haven't you? You've all heard it. And this is, so the very first thing we had to go through was explaining very, very clearly exactly what it meant. And this meant training. The operators were taught exactly how their salaries were going to be worked. They were taught basic IE. They were taught problem solving. All of these things so that they understood and they started to trust. And I say I've worked in companies that, so knitwear, fully fashioned knitwear. We went on to T-shirts. And one particularly interesting one with salaries was ladies' hosiery. Ladies' hosiery factory, working in teams of 6. There's about 4 operations making a pair of tights. 4 machines, plus 1 operation at the end of where you just get the tights and just count them into a bundle, tie them up, identify them so they can go off to the dye house. Because obviously it all comes in the greyish state. And I was working for Capit B at the time, and we were called in, and they said, it's not working. So we had what we called high-impact training, which we were developing along with our Dutch colleagues. And I'd called these 6 people in, and the base, we had to give them a lot of training, as I said, on how the teams work and all the rest of it. But I was working with the managers, and I'd say this, at no time did I implement modular manufacturing. At no time did I ever implement it. What I did do was guide and help the factory management to implement it. Not me walk in, this is how you do it, because that doesn't work. It's different for every company, every product, every culture of every company. So you've got to help the managers implement it so that it suits the culture of their organisation. Don't try and change the culture of the organisation to the system. So, anyway, we called these 6 people in the first team. All right, they're a little bit of a hand-picked team. And the first question was salaries. And we sat there and we said to these 6 people, how much salary do you want? How much do you want us to pay you? Trick question, this, isn't it? Yeah. Mutter, 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 mutter. And they came back with an hourly figure. And the manager said, certainly, happy to pay you that. Great. And they all, oh. And he said, for that I want this many pieces an hour. Let's go back, mutter, mutter, mutter. And they came back with another figure. Okay. And the manager said, look, here's a list. This is your hourly salary that you want, you can have, and this is how many pieces an hour I want from it from the team. And an agreement was reached. It was open, it was clear, it was transparent. And the deal with the company was that the company supplied the equipment, they supplied the materials, they supplied the mechanic. The team of 6 operated as their own factory, made their own decisions. They have nominated their salary. So off they went, and the factory finished at 2 o'clock on a Friday, 4.5-day week. And the first week I was there, they got to 11:30 on Friday, they'd done the target for the week. Oh, what do we do now? Oh, go home. Oh, thank you. Off we go. So off they went. So, of course, after a couple of weeks of this, the manager wasn't happy. His valuable machines were standing idle. So we called them in and said, right, work till 2. Okay. They worked till 2. And what they said was that what we will do is any overproduction over your target, we put it into a pot. So should you underproduce any one week, for whatever reason, we'll take from the pot. Great. Great, this worked fantastic. Now remember, this is a completely different management operator arrangement. Empowering the worker. The managers had to change, the operator had to change. Of course, what happened was that the pot got bigger and bigger and bigger. Oh, what are we going to do with the pot? Well, we have 2 big holidays in the UK, Christmas and the big summer break. I know, let's twice a year convert this pot into money and give you a bonus. Oh, fantastic, great. Yeah, we'll go along with this. This is what happened. And that factory, I know Ladies' Tights has got one of the lowest labour contents of any product. But that factory was one of the last in the UK that I know of that eventually shut because of wage rates. Because it was so effective. Now, some of the other teams were never that good. Some of the other teams we couldn't let self-manage. We had to give them targets. And so, this is what I was saying, so with any one factory, you can't have one system, and one system works. We had to modify the system to the particular demand abilities of the operators. And so another example of with how the training was working was that I was doing a training exercise for these 6 people on some team dynamics. And I gave them a questionnaire to fill in. And one of the team says, can you explain this question to me, Paul? So I went round, and she'd written on a bit of paper, David is dyslexic. So David, one of the members of the team, had obviously got dyslexia. Couldn't read properly. I didn't know this. She wanted to alert me in such a way that it didn't embarrass her other team member, but wanted to support her team member, because this is the way they were starting to think. So, of course, easy. I just go back down the front and said, as there's been a confusion with the question, we'll go through each question one by one. So, of course, David was now able to hear it and actually give his answer. And this is the way they worked. Very, very close. They became very close socially. And it was a very big change. But this is the change in the culture, and this is the change, and this is the sort of things you've got to invest in, and this is the sort of things that will hit you with your lean. If you went down to the modular route. Everybody's sitting quiet. No one's answering, no one's questions. Those of you that know me, those of you who attended training programs, know that I always say, please ask questions. Attract my attention. Wave your hand. Throw something at me. You know, preferably money. That usually works. But throw whatever. Yes, Roger.
That was an environment where the style didn't change and the product stayed the same. And
Yeah.
you've obviously done similar things in factories where the style didn't change.
Yeah.
The product stayed the same. Can you give us some information about the effects in that?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. A lot of the factories we worked in, as I say, I worked where we were making T-shirts. The same factory would make polos, they'd make T-shirts, they would make semi-casual shirts. And what they did is, what we found, a lot of the companies would run traditional lines in the factory. But alongside the traditional lines, they would run modular. Run the two side by side. Where you got the constant product, quite often these would be run on the traditional lines, because the modular was there for several purposes. Short orders, small orders. You wouldn't disrupt the progressive bundle has got its advantages, but its biggest disadvantages, you know, is to get it from start to finish and get it through the line. Takes a long time, and you're going to lose a lot of output. By putting it through the modular line, they would get it done quickly. So you didn't disturb the progressive bundle. Also, they were used for, if you've got the same style going through, and you get delivery instruction, and you're short of size 20 reds, right? Okay, whack size 20 reds through the modular. So, because they were quick response. So, it's the best way we found was to run the two side by side, getting the two advantages. And also, a lot of the companies would also use the modular lines for pre-production runs. Right? They'd find the faults before we put them onto progressive bundle lines. And so, okay, so we find a fault and we stop the modular line. Okay, we've stopped 6-8 people. It's far better than stopping 40.
Sorry, can I ask another question? Putting modules together,
Yeah.
is that the most difficult part of the setup?
Yes.
Actually getting people to work with each other instead of working by themselves?
Yeah, I'm going into what I'm going to be talking about this afternoon, but Roger, yeah. And one of the biggest problems and biggest mistakes people made was picking assembling teams based on the skills of the operator. That was the biggest mistake, and that's what many of them made. What you do is you devise the team based on the personality of the operator, and then give them the skills. Yeah, and we used to use Belbin. Belbin, an American guy who a lot of personality profiling, and it was a very crude tool, but it would actually identify the personality traits of the individual operator, and then you would mix the teams together based on that. Didn't always work, but it gave you a good start. But lots of things happened with the implementation. I mean, teams were not set in stone initially, and I even knew one company where the teams were allowed to put members up for transfer, which, yeah, I wasn't very happy with that one. That was almost like humiliation. But then they did actually have teams made up out of rejects from the others, but quite often also these people would be, if you got progressive bundles, they'd be put back onto progressive bundle lines because some people just weren't suitable. And so that is the biggest part. But then it's also putting the team together, extensive training, but the financial costs, as I'll be talking this afternoon, to me, okay, training is all about, I can put it, everything's got to be cost effective. That's all I'm going to say. I come from an environment, as I said, where the guys I work for were interested in one thing. Yeah? They weren't in business to make garments, they're in business to make money, and quite rightly. And you had to perform. Okay, so that's any questions on that? And so I could keep on going on and on, different anecdotes about the garment. Yeah?
Yeah, there's a question, there's a hand raised there. So please ask your question, yes.
This system that you're talking about, it presumes that there will be a continuous flow of work, because if you work at an hourly rate or a piece rate, that means the moment the workers are working, say, 4 hours a day, they are not going to be satisfied if there is no continuous, assurance of work coming in. So is that one of the things that we need to consider when we are doing this kind of planning?
You need to do that with any factory.
But sometimes, like in today's orders, where the orders are not assured, there is a major up and down. So how do you tackle it then, if there is no assurance of continuous work all through?
Well, I don't think that there's a great deal of difference between using progressive bundle and using the modular on this, because no operator is going to be happy if they're out of work. Now, in the progressive bundle, the experienced operator knew how to work the system. Right? If I'm the experienced worker on progressive bundle and I see I'm running, there's no work at the front of the line, I work as fast as I can to run myself out of work, because then I'm paid for doing nothing. And then I can recharge my batteries ready to go again. Right? Whereas the inexperienced worker slows down to her work supply. Obviously, so there's no difference between that and modular. If the modular team would run out of work, then that is actually a management failing. And yes, they'd be very unhappy. Very unhappy. Particularly the sort of people that, as I said, in the UK, many operators had worked for many years in the industry and were totally money-focused. And they were not shy in saying what they thought. And so you would get this conflict and problem. So it all came down to good planning, good merchandising, and this is all part of the modular process. It was not just based on the factory floor. I will talk about the factory floor because I'm a factory floor person. When you start putting me into the advanced areas, that's some sort of black art that I don't understand. I'm just the guy I was just the factory manager that shouted, "Where's my work?" Right? But the companies had to embrace the whole thing. They had to interact with the customer in a different way so that the work was there, the orders were there. The whole process was sharpened up. Your ordering, your relationship with your fabric and component suppliers had to be different. I just sort of touched on this. As I go into factories, I absorb all the time, and I did start to get part of this, but it wasn't really my focus. But it is, yeah. But any production worker whose money is based, whose salary is based on output, is going to be extremely unhappy if you can't supply them with work. And with competition, they'll go down the road to the next employer. Somebody else was going to ask them.
Who was asked that?
Most of the factory here, we are at the crossroad where we are running assembly line, we are struggling with modular, we have a group system, we have a piece rate. What do you think? The assembly line has a future or is relevant in coming time or no?
It all comes down to circumstances, but to me, as I'll be saying this afternoon, to me, yes, I think the assembly line does have a future, depending upon the circumstance of the particular organisation. If you've got a long-running, static, as is Roger's point, if you've got a long-running static product, then there is still a future for the assembly line, in my opinion, but a very well-run assembly line. And the problem with a lot of assembly lines is they weren't very well run. Okay. And that's, to me, that's the biggest problem.
As well as the assembly lines, over a period of time, assume your lean lines mature, they start delivering much better result than assembly. Of course, there's no reason to, so there's no love lost for any of the production system. What delivers you, for you and your customers, is what mix you're going to retain.
But Mr. Bheda, the problem is the customer demands are changing. We don't know what is long run today, whether the customer will adjust, will buy from you or not. So what happens at the production floor, if you give them a system like, it's changing the mindset. The entire industry was probably focused towards either a piece rate or assembly line. Now we tried focusing them like lean or manual. This modular is a better way of doing it. Today we have a longer run. I'm running on the assembly, then I'm converting them. But tomorrow I may not have the longer run. And then again I get some long run. So this changeover is creating a big confusion.
Rajesh, I think you're absolutely right. And this is a very good session that we are going to have, because we are going to have all production managers over here. The challenge today, what you have questioned, what you asked Mr. Paul, he's not able to really assimilate your question, because the situations are changing so much that he's talking about a system. Here, where is the system? There is an order for 1,200 garments, there's an order for 12,000 garments. That's what Mr. Roger also had in mind, that when you talk of one continuous business, you have a system going. Fantastic what Paul has just told us. But we are in a difficult and a challenging situation. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to ask for one more question to be asked to Paul. Then I'm going to ask Paul to carry on. And I'm going to keep about 15 to 20 minutes. Or if he finishes earlier, half an hour, we will have an interactive session, if Tony allows me, between the managers and to understand, because we are all here together. And all the best talents and the best managers are here. And for us to understand what is going to be the best system that we have to evolve, at least for the next 2 years, when the European and the American scenario is not going to be good. Does that answer, Rajesh, to you? Is that okay, sir, if we do that? Okay, we'll take one more question.
Okay, can I just make a comment before we do that? I'll just say that part answer to the question is that we're looking at different systems. Whether it be, as I say, a lot of the companies hedge their bets. They would have a modular alongside a traditional. But at the end of the day, whether it's a modular line, whether it's a traditional line, and if you're moving between styles, I always say that, excuse me, if you're moving between styles, the first thing you should always do is, when you're looking at your operators and putting people on new styles, is I always forget operations and I look at skills. And I will move operators based on the relevant sewing skills. Long seaming, short seaming, stopping in corners, sewing round curves, matching notches. Working like that, and you can actually transfer operators between operation to from style to style quite quick, a lot more quickly if you're thinking in that sort of way, because the operator will actually readjust a lot quicker. So you can actually then move on small production, on small lines, on small orders. So it is a different way of thinking, because if you actually took a matrix and wrote down the same product but different styles, down one side write operations, on the other side write the styles, and then just tick off the features that occur, 80% of the operations will be common. Right? And you can then use the skills training to interact with that, to do that. So it's a different way of looking and planning the lines and planning well, I say planning the factory. Yes, we all plan the factory, and then the customer pulls the plug on a style. I know that, but
Tony, you have a question? We'll take one question more.
Yes. Paul, in this lean, we tend to concentrate too much on the operator. my bigger problem is the management. Where is the lean management? If you were to see the business in North India, we had many reasons to believe that on a managerial level we needed so many people because we were doing multi-type of garments. Over a period of time, things have changed. I would go 10 years back, probably whatever I cut, 80% of the goods would go out for some reason or the other. I was manufacturing some, outsourcing some, a lot of embroideries going out for beadwork. On today's date, I would say 80% doesn't go out. All manufacturing is in-house. You have computer embroideries. Buyers are going more for that than other embroideries. Maybe something here and there. Everything is between the four walls. But somehow, we still have too many people to manage the show. And becomes very difficult to know who's managing the show. And if the show was not managed well, you didn't know who's responsible for that. So, as on today's date, if the factories were to cost, what does it cost to make a garment? The cost of the operator working in the organization actually is a very small part. The bigger part is the managing. So my whole thought process is a case study that, Radnik is here, PM Pro's there, they are typical Indian factories and considered a little bit on the efficient side. That what sort of a strength do they have to manage the show compared to our competitors? What sort of people they have to manage the show? Because this excuse that we do multiple garments and we do this, what has happened over a period of time also, that when we spoke about Bangladesh or we spoke about Indonesia, yes, we were still comfortable because they were too concentrated on making particular garments. We thought they were good at that. Customer wanted multiple garments, had to come to us. Over a period of time, they've got into multiple garments. In the same systems they follow, we are overloaded with the managerial systems, and you go back to your organization and they feel so suffocated. Some of them do feel that, I have too many people to handle, but doesn't know how is he going to do without these people. So I think the bigger problem over here is actually lean management than that operator.
Right. I was hoping I got another slide there that might have answered that question, but it's obviously we're doing two presentations in one day. I've got half of one presentation in my mind and half of the other one. But yeah, okay. First thing is you say some companies have got better managers and management than others. Well, that's obviously not an accident. They've obviously worked at that. But to me, when I go into factories, I work with operators, but I also do a lot of management training. And I don't know if you're aware of in the UK, we used to have what we call the Investors in People standard, which was the best way to do it. It was a standard whereby the company looked at its business objectives and then put all training and development activities aimed solely at the business objectives. And this went right the way through the business, every tier of employee. And I actually worked as consultant with the first garment company in the UK to get this award. And so we were having to identify how we take best practice from other sectors and apply it to the garment industry. And obviously, and this involved looking very cleanly at management structures. And the first thing we found was that a lot of managers didn't have a role. Or if they had a role, it wasn't defined. And so you would get overlapping, and so you would get territorial disputes, for want of a better term. And you get other areas that weren't being managed because, oh, that's not my responsibility, that's his. No, I thought it was yours. And so we had to very, very clearly define the role of the manager within the organisation. And from there you could see what management levels did you need? What strata of management did you need? You could take out whole management stratas. But as long as you knew the role of the manager, from the role of the manager, you knew you could identify his key tasks. From there, you could identify his skills and the skills and knowledge he needed. From there, you could assess, and then you could develop. And you could actually put in a much more professional management structure. And so that is the way we've always addressed it. And it is a case of looking at your management, looking from the top down, what are roles, and then, as you say, the manager is nothing more than any other employee, is just employed to do a different job. But let's make sure he's got the right job, look at the whole management process. So, yes, I've been concentrating on the operators here on this conversation. That's just the way it went. But we also, as I said at the start, we did have to very seriously it wasn't just the operators that we struggled with, it was supervisors, it was managers. The managers had to learn a completely new way of managing, completely new way of planning. And so, as I said, my experience is predominantly with the production function. But you're going to have to go through the whole of your organisation from top to bottom, saying what roles do I want people to perform, what role does that person perform, and then match the two. And you will find gaps, and in some areas, in other areas, you will find over-management. That start to answer the question?
Well, it goes into many layers.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a techie, yes, it does answer the question. In your mind, you know all these things. But it goes through so many layers. And in those layers, there is so many people. Literally, I think over here when we work on to operator versus non-operator, some of the mediocre factories are still 1:1. For every operator, there is an extra person.
That's most ideal.
That's a very ideal situation, I'm telling
They're
you.
going up to 3.
I think, Tony, we'll leave this to little later part.
But this
For
afternoon,
our session, we'll ask Mr. Bheda now to move on to the next presentation, which I think Madhura.
but I'll
It's
be
a
able to show you a
continuation,
ratio
yes.
this afternoon.
It's a
I'll show you a ratio
continuation.
this afternoon.
And after we finish that, then we'll go into an.
I'll take about 7-8 minutes to take the presentation forward, and then we'll have the team from Madhura present their lean transformation case study. So again, we have a full case study showing how it went, and then we can have an interactive session. It'll be interesting perspective to bring in from South, and again from a very well-known corporate. So I'm just sort of going to now move forward. Toyota said that many a times in lean transformation, 2 fundamental pillars which may get overlooked when you get stuck into the jargons and the tools are the continuous improvement and respect for people. They are very, very key. And continuous improvement, of course, has to be going down to every worker. That's where the Kaizen, Point Kaizen, Kaizen Blitz, longer Kaizen projects come into picture, because that's really the heart and soul. And there are new interpretations of Kaizens coming in there. Respect for people, and as again Paul said, that managers acting as teachers, relinquishing the previous role of directing. I tell you do, don't use this, or keep it home, no need to bring it. In my factory, workers work. They're not supposed to think. Things are changing. People are giving responsibility, self-managed lines, self-inspection line, badges, my pride. We don't require any quality controller to come into line because we know what we do and we can take that responsibility. We don't require police to man the signals. We have workers really realizing that empowerment, getting recognized, getting recognition in the society as well, doing a lot of interesting things. The key messages for every employee, starting from the boss up to the lowermost ladder, the best can be improved. Can we engage our mind in thinking how to get into that improvement process as such? Worker communication, we had touched upon a little last time. I have 2 small examples of 2 companies. First company is Unistyle Image, a brand which is quite successful in India, sort of casual wear. I visited their factory about now 20 years back in Oklahoma, and I found huge posters of their merchandise on shop floor. And I said, that's a welcome change. This is different. And he said, yes, we want our people to know what we produce so that they have association with brand. And I think that's an excellent thing. And of course, the brand has done very, very well for themselves. Mass Holdings, if you enter the factories, go on the shop floor, huge posters. Workers exactly know what they produce. They are not yet another sewing operator. They know what brand they produce for. It's very, very important that workers have association. Then only you can really engage their mind into that improvement process. But if you have disconnect, that I have a daily transactional business, you come in, you give your 8 hours to me, get your money, relationship over, then it's a different thing.
So, Rajesh,
Yeah.
what's the state of HR in this country?
Pardon me?
What is the state of HR in this country?
A lot needs to be done. A lot needs to be done, but, yeah. There's going to be a case study coming in, and you have some excellent examples which will be shared, and there are a lot of new initiatives being brought in. And yesterday, the presentation did not go on, but small steps are giving 50% reduction in absenteeism, 30% reduction in migration. People hadn't used certain tools as such. We had presumed that the absenteeism is going to be so much, migration is going to be so much. We had taken it on face value that we have to live with this problem. That's not the case. The moment you start getting into problem solving and 5 analysis, you can find solutions to virtually most of the problems. I'm not making it too simplistic or oversimplified, but that was not done. Secondly, HR, you go to factory and you have a meeting going on of an important initiative. Never will the HR be called for the discussion. He was considered to be a payroll management fellow. He's not called for the meeting. So we have to say, where is the HR or personnel, whatever you call them? Please bring them in because we want them to listen. And it makes a difference. So we have sidelined them for whatever reason. We need to bring them into picture and really get into HR as a function as such. But I think we're going to move faster. Yeah.
Before bringing the brand to the sewing line,
Yeah.
I would request some Indian factories to bring the mock-up to the sewing operator first.
I think let's not get into blame game. Okay. But there are many factories which have mock-ups, and only by bringing mock-ups things are not going to move. You're looking at the entire management system. Please, there's a lot of good thing being done. Be appreciative of that and look at positive thing. Look at it's either half empty glass or half filled glass. Somebody says it's not empty glass, it's half of water, half of air. So our job as teachers, as consultants, as the coaches is to take a positive message and take the people forward. By pulling people down is not going to help anybody. Sorry, I'm just being blunt. So what I'm saying is, yes, a lot of people have done good start. You have to start. A long journey has to start with a small steps, baby steps. Help them out. They become confident. Their muscles are good. They'll go for climbing that mountain. Okay? Please don't pull the people down. They're working in difficult situation, doing a good job. They can do much, much better, but yes, we need to appreciate their contribution. So what is the way forward? The way forward is that all of us have to work together because the strength of the chain is equal to its weakest link. So many a times you spend a lot of time on the shop floor, only sewing floor. Other departments start pulling you down. No, we have to work together. We must understand that. Okay? All departments have to work together for only one common goal. Common goal is satisfy customer, delight customer, so your customer is happy giving his money to you, smilingly. Can all departments work together for that? Now, of course, a lot needs to be done, but can be done as long as you put that common thinking in people's mind. And a lot of work we have done with this group of factories have really brought the departments together. People have gone on record saying that, yes, we enjoy working with each other. So, to move forward, many a times our management systems are such that we have departments are fighting against each other. Which department is supreme? Which one is number one? Which one is number two? Which one is number three? Can we not have all of us number one? As a team number one, because it's only Team Radnik. Either we win or we lose. So we can't really have the departmental egos going on top of the company's ego. Not possible. Or for that matter, any organization. Alright? So that is key. And that message has to come clearly, and we have to sort of practice that on a regular basis so people don't get confused and move forward. I just want to show a couple of pictures. This is from Kyrgyzstan. This is a celebration by the garment industry workers of a factory in mountains. They had a sort of outing, and they have theme of Red Indians celebrating together as a family. Very, very interesting. there's a celebration of Light Industry Workers Day, which is the annual kind of a day for the industry, and the garment industry workers sort of performing in a circus arena and celebrating and sort of, sharing their cultural activities and things like that. And I feel that was nice. Can we have some activities where we, together with our workers, celebrate something? That we are together, we together build the industry, otherwise we can't. We can't in isolation do. So there are lots of interesting things. Government certifies, gives certificate to people who have special contributions. And people really take it as a pride that, yes, the industry recognizes me for my contribution. But our people somewhere are forgotten. Again, this is a positive example. I'm not criticizing again. Need to do. But no, I was sometime back in a factory and they had a chat party. And that day on the terrace, all workers got together and there was a chat from Old Delhi, Chatwala was called. Everybody was enjoying. And I was touched by that effort or that initiative in one of your factories. What I'm saying is, you also part. I saw you. So what I'm saying is, these are smaller. I also want to share one more initiative before I call Lal. When they went for the lean initiative, I was talking to them and one of their GMs said, we had told the workers, the way we complete this initiative, we will serve you lunch with our own hand. And all the workers sat together and the CEOs and the GMs served them food with their own hand. And they said the workers are almost crying in tears. What I'm saying is that ultimately we're humans, all right? We must feel pride in what we do. We must feel that we've done a good job. We're there together. If you can do that, it's possible. We can create subculture. Please, you can't change the entire country's culture, but you can create subculture. And that's what many successful companies have managed to do through their leadership, through their initiatives and so on. So, with that, I hope we have been able to give you some perspective. Of course, in one seminar, not all the doubts are going to get cleared, but we have time for discussion. So, can I invite, with session chairman's permission, Madura team to share their case study?
Please come forward.
And we will have time for discussion. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Bheda.
Thanks a lot.